Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Ketogenic Fasting Project. Today, I want to expand on a video I did a little while back. Um, I was talking about how the carnivore diet affected my autistic symptoms and other related symptoms. So this video, I want to expand on that somewhat. I actually got that video was a lot more popular than anyone I'd ever done. So, and I actually did get a few questions from people. So it's nice to get some feedback and not just complaints. So these videos and what I'm doing, I call an experiment. Started out basically on a ketogenic diet and had a lot of really good results. And then I think like a lot of people, I migrated to carnivore diet. So carnivore diet's a lot simpler. It has a lot of appeals to it, and many people are having great results on it, especially people with autoimmune diseases. So I seem to have actually made some additional improvements by going to carnivore. There was a point there where I was like, wow, I really, especially with cognitive things. So, um, I want to talk about why I make these videos because since a lot of my older videos don't get very many views, I figure I might as well explain why I make these videos. And this video is going to be a little longer than normal. I know I typically try and keep them short because people don't listen to long videos. People in general aren't crazy about long format. But since I'm expanding on a previous video, I'm going to take a little more time with this one. And I primarily did this to get the word out because I had really great results. I knew other people had really great results. And, you know, people could consider all kinds of dietary changes or, physical practices or whatever to improve their health or deal with a health problem, lose weight, etc. But this one really stands out. I tried a lot of things over my life. When I was a kid, they were putting me on diets all the time because I was gaining weight from when I was a little kid, and my mother was obese too. So there was other obese people in the family. So, anyways, I had all kinds of problems with this or that seemed relatively minor at the time. But I used to get a lot of ear infections and I had allergies. My sister had terrible allergies, had a lot of sinus problems. And I knew that, certain foods I couldn't eat, like walnuts, melons, stuff like that. They'd give me blisters in my tongue, which is a weird hereditary thing. And I remember when the fruit juices first came out in the little pouches, those things would give me terrible rashes. But I didn't really know too much other than that. Uh, And the doctors really didn't have much input. I had really bad acne that ran in my family too. And now I suspect that's really driven by carbohydrates, but most likely refined carbohydrates like flour and sugar. So I like to get the word out because all that stuff affects quality of life. I know that my quality of life is much better since I started the ketogenic diet and now the carnivore diet. It's getting even better. Things are getting easier, and people out there suffer. People are spending money on prescriptions or not being able to spend money on prescriptions. Medical problems are probably the number one cause of bankruptcy in the United States. The healthcare budget is astronomical and is going to exceed what 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 the federal government spends on healthcare is going to exceed what it takes in before too long, and of course the cost to individuals is astronomical. So um, I actually remember a time when I think it was Carl Sagan who kind of coined the phrase astronomical. He said that he kind of put that into perspective, and said, these numbers are in the billions, and then I think it was Dr. Feynman came along and said, oh yeah, well, the economic numbers are going to exceed the astronomical numbers pretty soon, and that's where we're at. Because of course um, we talk about dollars in the trillions now, and healthcare is a big chunk of that. People are often surprised at how much money is spent on obesity, diabetes, and related diseases. You know, related treatments. It dwarfs cancer and all kinds of other stuff. So not only is this important to quality of life, it's important to the economic future of the world, because somewhere around 50% or more of the population of the entire world is pre-diabetic or diabetic, and it's only getting worse. Of course, you got the scourge of Alzheimer's and autism, and a lot of people are going to give me hate mail because I included autism and scourge in the same sentence, but just ask anyone who does take care of somebody who's autistic, who can't communicate, can't take care of themselves, and they wish they both had a better quality of life. So anyways, if you're not afraid of trying something new, you might want to look into this. There's lots of great sources of information out there. I know I just started watching another series and started reading another book. It's I'm gonna have to look it up because that just slipped my mind. You know how it is when you put the microphone in front of you. But I'll come back to that. Diet seems to trump surgery, radiation, and even exercise. I'm starting to believe the concept that your health is probably about 80% diet and maybe 20% exercise. I know a lot of exercise fanatics out there might disagree with me, but the truth is if your diet's bad enough, you're not going to be able to exercise. You just can't out exercise a wrong diet. The last doctor I was going to refer to that I started watching videos from is it's Dr. Annette Bosworth. I think she kind of goes by Dr. Boz, and she wrote a book called Any Way You Can that I just started. It's very good, and I'm be sure to do a book report on that. But you can catch her on YouTube. She has some really good videos for people, especially at entry level. She explains the topics very clearly. So she's just one of many sources, though. So let's do our best to put this information age to our service. And don't count on somebody else to educate you. We live in an age where we see themes like N of 1. So people do experiments on themselves and they have good results, and that's a strong indicator of something to look at, right? And when you have a bunch of individuals doing stuff like this, you have true democracy. You don't have to wait for a government or an institution of some sort to decide to do something. People are doing it for themselves all the time, and they're sharing the information. Like I said, this is the information age, and it could be more about individuals than it's ever been. So why I make the videos the way I do. They're not particularly flashy. The colors aren't particularly exciting. But part of that is because as a person myself who is very sensitive to light and sound and stuff like that, even getting good sleep is challenging for me. I take all that into account. A lot of people know that blue light has the ability to hinder the production of melatonin, and when you hinder the production of melatonin, it makes it more difficult to go to sleep or stay asleep. So my slides typically, I do experiment sometimes with other formats, but my slides typically have as little blue light as possible, and I don't use music. I may add some at the end later or something like that, but I keep the colors and the lights, the sounds to a level where just about anybody can accommodate them. Of course, it's not very exciting, so a lot of people are just going to pass on by because it's not entertaining enough. But you know, what do you can't please everybody, and I kind of feel like I'm serving a niche because um, there's quite a few autistic people who are just they click on a video and they get hit with some loud music, they're just going to click off right away because that's going to completely distract from any content, especially information for them. So I don't do a lot of flashy production in these videos because I'm trying to transmit information and I'm not really focused on entertaining people. So I tend to keep these videos short, like I said, but sometimes you got to do more. And to be perfectly honest with you, I like long format, and maybe I'll just do longer videos. And then, because if people aren't going to finish them, they're not going to finish them. You know what? I can't make them finish it, right? So I can't really uncouple autoimmune disease and autism because they're oftentimes present together. You know, I mentioned in the previous video that a lot of autistic people have other syndromes or disorders. You know, once you have one, you're more likely to have another, as they say. And everybody kind of has this, typically has a unique blend of these problems. And like I said before, you know, I'm not claiming this is some sort of cure or something. I'm not trying to say autism is a disease, but what I am saying is that the symptoms I have that are related to it have gotten better with diet in a way that no therapy or drugs that I've experienced could even come close to. So, but when I am talking to people in autism and autoimmune forums online, diet is often kind of a bad word. You see a lot of people that are looking for prescriptions. You know, they're asking about different prescriptions and stuff like that. They're asking about how to get diagnosed, how to get services, how to, you know, and I don't blame them. You know, a couple of years ago, that was probably about the only thing I would have thought about. But now I realize how powerful changing your diet could be, experimenting with your diet, trying foods in isolation, learning to uh, check your blood sugar, check your blood ketones, check your heart rate, see how your athletic performance changes. All these things are all simple testing methods that anybody can do just about, and they can make a much bigger difference than anything you're going to get from anyone else. You know, part of the thing that stops everybody is they think that, you know, one, this is probably just a fad, but I seriously doubt it because I think hominids have been eating animals for 200 million years. You know, that's going back to about Homo erectus or so. And there is absolutely no evidence we ate any plants until about 50,000 years ago. And if you want to argue with science or you want to call me a science denier, all I could say is they take the bone samples, even fossilized bone samples, they put them in hydrochloric acid, they eliminate the minerals, and they're able to tell you what those people ate. And it's not looking good for plants. It's looking like we've been eating animals all this time. And if you look at that paper by Mickey Bendor, man as the fat hunter, fat seeker, you'll see that, you know, clearly archaeological sites have shown that we followed around these big, fat, tasty animals and ate them, you know. And as they became extinct, we ate smaller and smaller animals. Our hunting techniques had to get better and better, and we started cracking the bones and eating the marrow out of them. We ate their brains, and that's what allowed human beings to evolve a bigger brain. And we also know that when you start eating grains and replacing animal flesh with grain and other plants, your skull actually becomes smaller, your jaw becomes smaller, there's not enough room for your teeth, There's not enough room for your glands. And so this is part of the problem with this diet that's been pushed upon us for all this time, that I'd imagine mostly well-intended people thought that, well, heart attacks are becoming common, saturated fat from animals must be the problem, and therefore we must shift to a plant-based diet. Well, I don't think the science is bearing that out, and that's why I have the confidence to try this myself. And this is why I have the confidence to at least suggest to other people that you look into it and take it seriously. I can't even necessarily describe exactly how positive the impact has been on me, but I'm going to try. And let's face it, people out there are suffering. In a way, we've all been brainwashed. We're afraid of fat. We're afraid of not eating fiber. People think that plants are full of these micronutrients that we got to have. And if you're not eating a glass of orange juice or whatever, you're going to get scurvy. And it's just not the case. Because if you eat fresh meat, you don't get scurvy, you don't get beriberi, you don't get pellagra, you don't get all those creepy diseases of the past that people scare you with. So we're seeing kind of the demise of the balanced diet idea, which nobody can really explain, and the heart healthy diet. It's not holding up. And people are suffering more than ever. They have plenty of calories, but they can't get the good nutrition. The only thing I'm really an expert in is me. I give people permission to tell everyone at my funeral I was a fool. And this experiment went, should this experiment go wrong, I'm open about it. I understand. I was skeptical too. But fruits, vegetables, and grains have failed me, and have the pharmaceuticals as well. They were little help. I used to go to the gym 5 days a week. I used to be able to at least bench press my weight, which got quite high. I used to leg press ridiculous amounts, like 12, 1,500 pounds, because fortunately my lower joints, other than my feet, don't fail me. So even when I was struggling with neck pain, back pain, shoulder pain, hand pain, I could always do the leg press. I got so heavy while I was working out for many, many years at the gym that the belt on the treadmill would stop all the time. And I tried all kinds of different treadmills. So I was that heavy that I was outside of the range of commercial treadmills. I did adapt to elliptical machines because that eliminates that problem, and that's what I use at home. So, but I had to get an expensive one. Even that is it's questionable as to how much longer that's going to last. But and then I got arthritis so bad I couldn't turn a doorknob. So let me tell you, when you can't close your hand tight enough to turn a doorknob, you're not doing much working out. And when your psoriasis is so bad you're bleeding through your clothes, you're not doing that much working out anymore. You at that point you feel defeated, and you literally feel defeated. And I don't mean that like my feelings felt defeated. I meant my body felt defeated. And everything got harder and harder, and everybody says, "Well, you're getting older, Maybe you shouldn't work out. So maybe you should eat more vegetables." But people are afraid to consider the fact that most plants might actually be bad for you. I am sort of an information junkie. If I've got one sort of autistic related talent that's probably an advantage, it's the fact that I can really dive into a subject, and I can stay focused on it. I mean, a lot of people describe it as being obsessed or whatever. I would say I like to call it perseveration or whatever. So I try and just focus that in a positive direction, and that's one of the reasons why I go through so many videos. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I'll listen to a lot of books, and I have a Facebook group where I squirrel all this away called the Ketogenic Fasting Project. It's a very small, quiet group, and it's basically about um, consolidating and organizing information both for and against ketogenics and carnivore fitness, fasting. And that's another thing. I didn't talk much about fasting. A lot of people are scared of fasting. A lot of people's like, oh, you don't want to lose any muscle or, whatever. But fasting is a very powerful tool. And I think mankind's been doing it for thousands of years. And you cannot underestimate the power of autophagy or just fasting, because when you're sick, fasting can be a very powerful tool to turn things around. When your joints are really hurting, when your psoriasis is really bad, when you don't feel well, sometimes an incredible remedy. When your mind isn't clear, it's a great way to clear up your mind. So I know there's a lot of controversy about it, and if you're in a carnivore group, you don't want to talk about fasting. If you're in some of the ketogenic groups, you don't want to talk about fasting. And a lot of people say, well, short fasts are okay, long fasts are bad, you're going to lose muscle, it's terrible, everybody's hurting themselves by fasting. But I think that you have to put all that in perspective. If you want to be a bodybuilder, fasting is probably not a great way to do it. Um, you know, you it's not going to be as efficient, but a lot of people like to work out in the fasted state, and a lot of people can tell you about the benefits, especially when you're not doing well. And then there's also the idea that maybe everybody should fast, do a prolonged fast once a year just to prevent cancer. So anyways, I don't want to leave fasting out of the project or the explanation, but I found it very helpful, and I found deep states of, once you go into ketosis, some people feel it much more profoundly than others, and I think maybe I thought it was really strong and powerful because it made my mind so much clearer than it normally was, and it's kind of gave me more command over my faculties. So deep state of ketosis, where you're just living off body fat for days, uh, can be a really great experience. So you could feel really good at that. I've never really been worried about losing muscle, so I never really had a problem putting muscle on. I just had a terrible time staying lean. So, anyways, there is that fine line in there. If you want to put on muscle and stay lean, it's probably the most difficult of tasks. There's a lot of experts out there on it now, but when when you don't know exactly what's going on inside, or which is the right foods to eat, then you're definitely not going to be able to do it uh, easily. So, um, the other thing here is I'd like to say that I'm kind of driven for the pursuit of a higher quality of life, because what's the point in living if you don't have quality of life? And I think for a lot of people, you get caught up in whatever you're doing, and the quality can suffer in terms of a loss of happiness or contentment. You feel like you're struggling all the time, and certainly when you're sick, that's a real problem. um, for me, a lot of it has to do with escaping anxiety, um, and being able to understand other people better. I try to interact with people a lot. So, some people understand that as not necessarily being outgoing or extroverted, and some people don't. So I won't really get into that very much. Um, so that's probably about enough for this slide, right? I can't really speak for anyone else, but or especially any other autistic people, but I suspect that the diet might help them as well. I can't believe in the last video I did about this, I forgot to mention the magic pill. Of course, that by the time I saw that movie, it had been out for a while, and I'd heard about it. And when I watched it, and I realized how closely it paralleled my own experience, um, I was really excited that I was out, and so I highly recommend that. You can catch it. I know I watched it on Amazon Prime, and I know it's on Netflix, and there's got to be other ways. You can order the DVD, and I think you can probably even watch it on YouTube for a few dollars. So I kind of have a pet theory that maybe autism, or at least some of the symptoms from autism, are an epigenetic response to environment, primarily diet. So I know I'll get a lot of hate mail for saying that, but um, those types of responses I think are entirely possible of rewiring the brain. So um, maybe in that context, maybe the right diet can ease the symptoms, right? So much of my life, like I said, has been about managing anxiety. I didn't even know what anxiety was until I got diagnosed with autism. So the other aspect of it is managing the environment. So um, on this diet, my brain feels like it's actually speeding up. I literally feel smarter. So who isn't going to benefit from that? When I got diagnosed, the clinician, I forget exactly what initials followed her name, but she was, a psychologist or psychiatrist. I don't recall exactly, but she said that, basically the thing is that your brain is wired different, and we actually talked about how I had been noticing that um, I would get in arguments with people about what color things were because it's that line between one color and another is often very different. And she's like, well, that's a good example. She's like, it's going to be that way with a lot of your sensory input. You're gonna sort of recognize the sensory input differently than other people. And one of that is that a lot of autistic people don't have the same filters that other people do. So, um, when other people can drown out, God, I can't turn those alerts off. Other people can drown out lights and sounds and stuff like that. Um, Even feeling, sensations, tactile sensations, and a lot of times autistic people, they don't have that ability to block it out. There's um, something going on there where it can be very difficult to, like, when people are talking, I almost cannot pay attention to all the conversations simultaneously, which is, at some point is impossible to actually retain anything, but you can't just like focus on another person. In fact, the easiest way for me to do it is to not even look, but like to take the visual aspects out of it, and then let all my resources go into listening to try and pick out the conversation from a single person as opposed to maybe background conversations or whatever. The other thing, which sometimes people kind of glorify it and make it sound cool, is synesthesia, and that's where some people will experience a sound as a color, or they see music in a visual sense or whatever. To me, it's kind of seems like what's going on is the circuitry behind the input from your senses, your touch, your feel, your hearing, your sight, get crossed. And so when they go into the brain, instead of necessarily seeing something, you might feel something tactile, or you might hear something and it causes you to see something. So, you know, for some people, it sounds like they're having some sort of magical experience. It sounds enjoyable. For somebody like me, it's just confusion because I don't see puppies and rainbows when that stuff get mixed up. I just get more noise. It just makes it harder to interpret the input. So. Um, manage these things in different ways. Like I said, light, sound, and touch are in your reaction to them are the main things. I wear an eye mask when I'm trying to sleep. Um, I use closed captioning on TV a lot because I have a hard time knowing what people say. I don't have a problem hearing, but particularly with TV, there's something that goes on there. I do a lot of rewinding and backing up, but I also see a lot of things that other people don't notice. I'll be watching TV with, I'm sure they find it annoying. I'm like, what was that? What was that? And then I should stop and play it back, and I catch all these obscure things that that are on the screen that nobody else notices. So it's just kind of to point out that there's a different experience there and that there is a constant distractions that you really can't ignore. I basically live in low light whenever possible. The lights in the office are low, the lights at home are low. I use light bulbs with specific colors that are less stimulating, I guess, or less distracting. Yeah, I actually go through different kinds of light bulbs. I found ones that are just less annoying, I guess. I do wear the yellow glasses in the evening. I'm a believer that the yellow tinted glasses do help you fall asleep faster because I don't get a chance to watch TV that often or as often as I'd like. So I've given up that little quiet time before I go to sleep is tough. So I put the yellow glasses on and I usually get tired and fall asleep. So you could use that technique if you're looking at your glasses or your phone or whatever. I wear special sunglasses. I say they're special, and I actually have some pictures I meant to put in this video. I might add them at the end of some of these items, but I hate to say where I get them. But the yellow glasses are just regular safety glasses or shooting glasses. I ordered some fancy ones off of Amazon. They just didn't fit my face. So I just use the regular and actually modify them a little bit. I put some tape here and there on there because they were scratching my nose. But the sunglasses I gotta have actual glass lenses. Something about plastic lenses, they just don't look right when I'm looking at things. And of course, anything plastic or polycarbonate is going to scratch easy, and it's just a waste. I've had some very expensive glasses. I used to have a friend who used to give me some very expensive name brand glasses, and they were good, but these are better, and I probably pay less than $40 a piece for them. They have actual Corning lenses, and the natural glass is much harder to scratch, and for some reason it looks better. So there's something to be said for the quality. And then if I don't use Apple products because they're just too expensive. I don't I think a lot of that just kind of annoys me too, because people buy all these expensive electronics and they don't use half of it. So what was the point? But in Windows 10, they do have settings. So if you're using Windows 10, you go to settings and then display. You could turn on night light, and you could tell it what time to shift the light in the screen so there's less blue light. And if you're using an Android device, you can get an app called Night Shift that does the same thing. And it's got quite a few options in it. So these all help. I mean, I don't necessarily know that I use them because I'm autistic, but because I have trouble getting good quality sleep, which might be related to autism, but these things help. I also have the windows in my vehicle tinted. I put radiant heat barrier over some of the windows in my house to make it darker. It's basically like a shiny insulating material. It does a good job of reflecting most of the sunlight away. And I do tint the windows and some of the windows in my house as well. So again, it's all about quality of life and being able to concentrate and focus better. Um, Another part of being at odds with your environment is noise. I do wear a lot of earplugs. I use the silicone ones most of the time, and I do use earbuds a lot. I mean, if just about anything I'm doing, I'm listening to something. If I got to go to the store, I'm listening to headphones. If I go walk with the dogs, I'm listening to headphones. Uh, I have some of the big headphones too. I think they're made by Walker, and you can plug in your. It's got a regular jack on it, and they not only do noise canceling, so like if you go shooting or whatever, they you can hear people talking or whatever, but they block out the noises from the guns going off or whatever. But at the same time, you can plug in, your phone or whatever, your iPod, so you can listen to things too. And so they're pretty handy because you can turn down the sensitivity to it so you barely hear anything outside or nothing at all. I also like the dense memory foam pillows because when you put that over your ear, it really doesn't sound really good. And to sleep, I want to have my eyes covered and my ears covered, and often at times that means covering my ears double, earplugs plus foam pillow. And then I've been experimenting with the binaural beats. There's all kinds of ones you can try on YouTube, and it's basically music with a certain beat in it that helps your brain want to get into that mode to go to sleep, and it also seems to work. And of course, that's a good place to look for something. When you're having anxiety or you're wound up or what you want to focus, it's a good thing to experiment with right there. Um, like when I'm working every day, I pretty much listen to people talking. At one point I decided that listening to music all the time wasn't going to get me anywhere, and so I try and use my listening time as a time to learn. So I do a lot of audiobooks and a lot of podcasts, and most of them are educationally oriented. And of course, these days, most of them have to do with diet and fitness. And I spend a fair amount of time in the car commuting to and from work, so I might as well not waste that time. I understand loving music and all that, but a little bit of music's all right, and a lot is probably a waste of time. So, I'm also, my clothing, I gotta wear a certain kind of fabric. I'm kind of almost obsessive about a certain type of shirt that's not even made anymore. I'm always scouring the interwebs looking for a certain type of shirt, and I actually, most fabrics just they're annoying and distracting. So I really don't wear socks. I have huge piles of socks where I buy different kinds of socks, looking for socks that actually fit on my feet. But that's another thing I had. I was born flat-footed. They put me in these braces and these special shoes, bent my foot around them so I'd have a arch like you're supposed to, and then um, it made my foot very thick, raised I believe what they call the instep, and they just don't make shoes that fit that. So I've been to many, many shoe store and salesman's like, yeah, I there's nothing I can fit you with. And socks are even worse. I have all kinds of socks where I cut the tops out of them so I have more room, and they still drive me crazy. So I spent a lot of time wearing sandals, which is a problem because I got psoriasis and cracked heels, which is just a bloody nightmare. And more and more, I've been wearing those Vibram Five Fingers because the top of that shoe is open and it doesn't smash my toes together, which created a whole nother skin problem. And they do fit tight enough that they do wear down those heels, those giant, nasty, calloused heels of mine, which have looking better now than they have in probably 20 or 30 years. So that is part of being at odds with your environment. Stimming. I don't even like the word stimming. It's like the word aspie. I never really got accustomed to that word. But stimming is basically slang for self-stimulating. So a lot of autistic people do it. It could be really subtle things like a lot of squinting, but oftentimes, especially in children, you see them flap their hands. I know as an adult, I can't flap my hands anymore because my wrists are bad. You know, there it hurts to do that. And when I used to do it, I didn't even know what I was doing. I do more of the contorting and stretching. Um, it's obviously a lot less intrusive. People and people aren't going to notice it. You don't think too much of when you see somebody stretching, but really, it typically becomes more intense when people have anxiety or they're uncomfortable. It's sort of like a physical reaction that distracts you from the discomfort or distress of being uh, whatever, being ridden with anxiety or whatever it is. But it's usually associated with being anxiety driven. So um, and I don't really hear other people talk about it, but I just kind of do that mental retreat thing too. If I'm out in the sun too long, I can't come out of my brain all of a sudden. Like my level of awareness of my surroundings is completely overwhelmed by sunlight. Now it's offset quite a bit by wearing good glasses, and now my skin doesn't seem to react to the sunlight like it used to. I used to burn real easy, and just the skin hitting the light hitting my skin was uncomfortable sometimes, and that's gotten better. But also, sound can drive you in too. There's nothing worse than standing in the middle of a street on a bright sunny day with semis going past you on both sides, trying to survey or something, and pretty soon you're just like your senses are so overwhelmed. It's 100 degrees out, traffic's rushing by you, the sun's pounding down on you, it's louder than hell, and you're trying to concentrate, and pretty soon you don't have any resources left. But like I said, these things are getting better. I also have a tendency to stare. A lot of times, when you stare at a fixed object, then you're able to concentrate better. I think that's where a lot of it comes from, because I can't explain why I and a lot of people have an aversion to looking into people's eyes. It may be because people's eyes are never really still. It's kind of what I suspect, but I don't know. I don't even know if it's worth talking about, to be honest with you. But I have a tendency to avoid eye contact. I make a conscious effort to try and make the appropriate kind of um, eye contact, but it's not always easy. You don't really know when you're doing it or overdoing it or not doing it. So whatever. Um, and I have a weird thing where like there's certain types of textures. I think it is like if I want to pick up something and it looks like it feels a certain way, I can't even look at it when I grab it, and I don't know what that is, but it is kind of related somehow. And then the other weird thing, I don't know that anybody else has ever mentioned, that I used to have mornings when I woke up and I not only didn't want to talk, but there's mornings when I woke up and it was like there was like a buzzing in my brain. I called it the rattle and hum. It kind of sounded like there was cicadas inside my head, just buzzing away and they're rattling away in there. I never really figured it out, but that is another thing that's gone away. I haven't had that in quite a long time. And these are the kind of things you mention to a doctor who has no idea what you're talking about. So the other thing is I'm pretty clumsy. You could ask my friends. We go out on a hike, and I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty much not gonna climb on that pile of rocks because I'm probably gonna fall over, and there is nobody here that's gonna drag me all the way back to the car. It ain't gonna happen. So I'm not climbing that. So just on the physical symptoms, off the top of my head, they've gotten better. My poor sleep has gotten much better. And now I've really made a priority of fine tuning that and getting the right amount of sleep and quality sleep. I used to get acid reflux or heartburn, whatever you want to call it. I used to get it all the time, and that seems to be gone. I used to buy those jumbo packs of Alka-Seltzer. That was my go-to. Um, get those at the big box store, and sometimes I'd have to have 2 packets of those just to get it under control. And nobody likes to talk about gas, but like on this diet, like there is almost no gas whatsoever, which is just weird. So, and then those weird little bumps people get on the back of their arms. I had that. It's gone. It just went away. Don't, it's just the side effect of the diet. Hay fever. I suffered from allergies all my life. I've got the sinus thing going on where the sinus passages, again, believed to be caused by eating grain. The sinus passages, my sinus passage, I had them scanned. I got a CAT scan one time because I was having all these sinus problems, and they're like, well, you just have these natural restrictions here and there, and I had a cyst inside of one of my sinus cavities. So anyways, that's all gotten better. I basically don't sneeze like I used to. I sneeze all the time, watery eyes, that whole thing. um, I did have a lot of luck treating that with quercetin. Another thing, I tried to talk to a doctor about it, and he's like, yeah, you can get that non-prescription stuff out of here, would you? But that worked really good, but I don't need it anymore. So if you're not ready for a carnivore or ketogenic diet, but you're suffering from hay fever, you might want to look into that quercetin. It's good stuff. I used to itch a lot. It's gotten way better. I used to itch all the time, all over the place. Now I still have some psoriasis, and that still itches sometimes, but I think I'm coming down on the good side of that. And hopefully that psoriasis will be gone too. I used to feel hot all the time. That went away. I used to have a lot of dry skin. That went away. I used to be a lot more lethargic. That went away. Now I've got energy for days. Yeah, so I've never been a very fast person, but you know, once you switch over to primarily burning fat, ketones, fatty acids, whatever, however you want to describe it, you have way more mental energy, and your mental capacity is nice and steady because you're not having sugar swings. Well, at least that's how it's explained, and it makes sense to me. But your body's kind of the same way. I mean, you can move really fast or lift something really heavy and exhaust your muscles, but if you're just going at a regular pace, you can go forever. So because you're just when you get done burning your dietary fat that you just ate, and you digested your protein, you just switch over to your body fat, and your muscles and your brain don't really care about the difference between dietary fat and body fat. It's burned the same way, and you feel the same, and you have the same amount of energy. So there's a very smooth transition there. Um, I'm not like a regular stutterer, like, a classic stutterer, somebody you're gonna notice it in a lot, but I used to stutter more for sure. And I noticed that, which, you know, you know, it's probably not really a major hindrance, but it probably bothered me more than it bothered anybody else. So, anyways, I'm glad it's better, and maybe it'll get even better than it is. And of course, I gotta not forget about weight gain. Like I said, I spent a lot of time in the gym, a lot of time trying to exercise, and I just kept getting fatter. And that's another thing that this diet does for you. You start losing weight. I really think that I might be getting down. I think I'm losing body fat again, and muscles going on easier. So I think I've broken my plateau, and I'm going to be doing a lot better. And then I need to mention floaters in the eyes. If you've had floaters in the eyes, you know what I'm talking about. And I'm kind of nearsighted, so they're easier for me to see. But they seem to be a lot smaller and a lot less numerous than they used to be, which makes them a lot less distracting and a lot less noticeable. So I'm grateful for that. So yeah, I'm going to talk about this touchy subject of savants. Of course, we've probably all heard the phrase idiot savant, uh, which, I suppose we could liken to an autistic person with talent. So Nobody really uses that term idiot savant anymore. It's considered derogatory, but it does kind of paint the picture of people who otherwise demonstrate some disability but have some extraordinary talents. Um, One of the more common sort of disabilities is just being socially awkward or socially impaired. So, however that is, that the social aspects of your cognitive abilities seems to be impaired, and certainly a lot of autistic people feel socially discouraged, I would say. But I'll make a good case in point. One of my online pals is Blake Gruez, and his thing is memorizing pi. And that guy, well, last time I looked, he was at over 8,800 digits of pi. So he's closing in on 9,000 as of today, and he'll be to 10,000 for too long. A lot of autistic people do have talents. I've seen people post pictures of them singing and making up songs on the ukulele, or talk about math, or doing artwork, drawing, and some of them are downright funny, but they're not particularly social, so you're probably not going to see them on stage making people laugh. But maybe someday, maybe that'll be a popular thing. And I got another online pal, Guadalupe. She has a tough time staying employed. She's, it's not easy, and it gives her a lot of stress and anxiety. Maybe one day that'll change, because a lot of autistic people are more comfortable online, interacting with people online. A lot of them, they have to live and do with less because it's hard to stay employed, or they don't have a job, or they're not employable. So, but I think that there's an untapped resource there, and maybe there'll be more online employment for these people, because most of them are actually pretty brainy people. I would like to think, especially in the higher functioning autistic people, it seems like the IQ is a bit above average. So, but of course, that's maybe just the people who get online, or maybe that's my own personal bias. I don't know. But there is a weird sort of distrust of people who are not autistic. Even I'm not saying autistic people get along all that well, because they can argue like just about anybody else, and they could be very cantankerous and very opinionated, just like anybody else. But there is a little bit of tribalism. You'll frequently see autistic people say they feel like aliens, or they feel like everybody else, and NT is kind of like everyone else. They're the neurotypicals. So you see this natural sort of tribalism, like autistic people or Aspies, or people with Asperger's are aliens, and they're stuck here amongst the Earthlings, which you know they just don't identify with. So it's like a self-imposed sort of separation, because it just don't mesh well, because the whole social aspects of life are confounding oftentimes. And some people just accept it. Some people fight it. Some people, they just can't do anything about it. I think that, long before I was diagnosed, I just thought, well, I'm just going to be one of those people that always seem strange to other people, because you just go from one awkwardly social situation to another, and some of them you just never forget. Some of those things you sometimes you're thinking about them, because you don't never quite understand what you did wrong. Of course, sometimes when you get older, you've thought about it enough times, you do. I used to just try and be content with considering myself to be eccentric. I thought, well, that's a label I can give myself, I can live with. Not even sure I knew what it meant, but um, I suspect that applies to a lot of people. Part of the thing about people that are roughly my age is a lot of uh, a lot of people weren't diagnosed. There wasn't when we were little kids. There wasn't the diagnosis wasn't going on like it is today. So now a lot more children are being, assessed earlier. There's a lot more people are able to assess them and stuff like that. So a lot of people get to my age, they have no idea, and they're kind of just guessing at what's going on, and they're like, so they just walk around feeling a little bit strange, I guess. Um, I know I tend to be very literal. I'm constantly confused by people who don't exactly mean what they say, you know. So it drives me crazy, like when I say I'm going to do something and I can't do it, you know, like, but other people, it's kind of just like understood, at a certain point, it's just not going to happen, and I'm not even going to explain it. So I tend to be a little more direct, and a little more detail oriented. I do try and be nice, because I know that I don't know where that edge is. I don't know when it's too far, and I don't understand how other people are perceiving what I'm saying and why I'm saying it a lot of the time, because I seem to be focused on a different aspect of the topic, or not necessarily on a different one, but I got off the train somewhere else, so to speak. And for a lot of reasons, a lot of people to me seem shallow and superficial, and in love with their empty opinions, because they talk about something, they act like they want to talk about something, but all they want to do is give you a quick opinion, and they don't want to talk about details. They don't want to talk about anything in depth. They don't want to compare anything. They just want to throw their opinion out there, and they just expect you to agree with it. And half the time, I don't even have an opinion yet. I'm more curious about what's going on. And that's the other thing. People are in such a rush to have an opinion. It's like, man, you gotta have an opinion right away, or something's wrong with you, or you're not smart or something. I don't know. So, anyways, that kind of drives me crazy. Um, but I think the subject in general is very important, and of health and diet, and what's going on with the economy, and how health is impacting the economy. And I think everybody should dig in. What's more important than your health, right? So another thing I had to do is to leverage whatever abilities or talents I had. I spent way too many years trying to be as good as other people at basic stuff like reading or writing or speaking or whatever. And finally, it was somebody who was like, "Yeah, you know what? That ship has sailed. You need to just work on developing what you're good at, and quit trying to be as good at reading and writing or whatever it was, socializing or whatever. Just let it go. Work on the stuff you're good at." Because I think that's the kind of the thing where especially where I grew up, everybody's just kind of raised to be part of a well-rounded individual, and that well-roundedness includes certain things, right? And so if you don't have those, you better keep working on it, even if it takes you your whole life. And of course, at some point, that's just ridiculous. But it took me a long time to learn that lesson. You're just never gonna be like everybody else, even on average, you know. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention meditation, because meditation is a powerful tool. I mean, I look at it like a ketogenic diet, fasting, carnivore. They're all powerful tools. And of course, especially if somebody who suffers from a lot of anxiety or whatever, um, uh, this is an important thing. So, um, to me, basic meditation is quieting the mind and talking to yourself, really. Um, but from a visual standpoint, my sight is by far my most powerful input, and I think it is for a lot of people. But my vision is very crowded, especially like when it's hard to filter out other things you see, and then when you have floaters in your eyes that are hard not to notice. Um, and then the other thing I realized one day is that there is a part of my mind where I'm always seeing things that are just coming from nowhere, the random images, as it were. Many of them are unidentifiable, just, I don't know, they look like tree roots or something like that, I don't know what it is. And sometimes it's recognizable, but that thing is always on and I'm always seeing it. So when I close my eyes, I go to meditate, I got two things. I've got the space where I imagine where I want to see things, and the space where these visions are always coming in. When I have my eyes open, I don't see that space where these visions just come in constantly as intensely, because there's so much visual input from having my eyes open in the world, the lit world around it, right? Now try and explain that to a doctor. They sent me to a vision specialist or something, a special kind of eye doctor or whatever, and they're like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. That sounds like it's cognitive. So I just talked to somebody else about it, and they're like, yeah, I've never heard of that before. I don't know what you're talking about. So I don't really know what it is, but it's a, it's just, it's. I bring it up because talk about how crowded the visual field is when all that is going on, and even when I meditate. I meditate with my eyes closed. I meditate with my eyes closed, my eyes covered, and earplugs usually. Sometimes earplugs and earphones. Sometimes guided meditation. And I'm never without those streaming sort of visions that come in, even when I'm trying to imagine something. Like if I'm trying to imagine just my, focusing on my breathing in and out, I'll just think of the number one and the number two. And it's gotten harder and harder to visualize the number one and the number two. They seem to just, I barely get the image going and then they dissolve. So what is that? I don't know, but a meditation is still a powerful tool. And organizing your thoughts, communicating internally, turning down the monkey chatter, however you want to call it. And I highly recommend it. So there's a lot of directions you can go in with it, but I'm not going to get into it here. Yeah, I guess that's about it for this slide. I just kind of don't have total control of my imagination or imaginary visual space right now, and hopefully that's one of the things this diet will bring back, because it's kind of been that way for a number of years. Anyways, the you can come find my group, the Ketogenic Fasting Project, on Facebook. 100% Carnivore and Beyond is another good one. The Worldwide Carnivore Tribe, zeroing in on health. Starting a new one, Autistic Carnivores. The Meat Cult is another one I'm starting on Facebook, specifically about the history of meat and the human diet. And then some other good sites to check out is meatheals.com. And Just Meat has a nice list of books to read. And I want to encourage everybody to keep learning. Please subscribe to my channel. Give this video a like. Send me your comments. And pass on links to this video to people that it's going to help. Thanks for watching.